Yes, good morning. It's Monday, the 28th of September 2020. Welcome back to the best On Ground Weekday Kickoff, and we're officially into the finals. NRL, AFL finals are upon us. It's a very, very exciting time for football fans of both of those codes, and we've also got a Bledisloe Cup kicking off just around the corner as well. So plenty to chat about. My name's Pete Fairbairn, and as always, I'm joined by one of Australia's preeminent sporting journos. And today we go right to the top of the pile, and NRL.com's Brad Walter is on the line. How are you, Brad?
Yeah, I'm great, Pete. It's this is a great time of the year, isn't it? Finals footy, and being a bit later in the season, it's generated a real feast of sport coming up. We're not going to get much sleep, I don't think, in the next couple of weeks.
No, well, you add the NBA finals, the IPL, and the French Open into the mix, and for those of us who unfortunately don't get to watch sport for the day job, there's going to be plenty of late nights trying to catch up on everything that's happening. We're going to start with some big stories in the NRL this morning, but first, just quickly, I'm going to talk you through the fixture for the first week of finals. We've got the absolute roaring favourites, Penrith Panthers, hosting the Sydney Roosters on Friday night. Winner of that one goes straight through to a prelim. Then an elimination final on Saturday afternoon, or late afternoon, I should say. In Canberra, the Raiders play the Sharks for the second week in a row. Saturday night sees Parramatta Eels travel to Brisbane to take on the almost unbackable favourite Melbourne Storm. And then the Sunday afternoon, the Rabbitohs up against the Newcastle Knights at ANZ Stadium. Four fantastic clashes there. But we're actually going to, after all of that, we're going to start off. Our first story this morning is actually one from Dave Rennie in the Daily Telegraph, which is about State of Origin. So Brad Fittler's named the first players for his New South Wales train-on squad. These are the players from teams who have been eliminated from the competition, and he needs them to keep training, and they've obviously got some regulations around the bubble. He's named 5 players to continue training: St George Illawarra's Tyson Frizzell and the uncapped Cameron McInnes, as well as Brisbane's Payne Haas and the Manly brothers Jake and Tom Trbojevic. Talk me through the omissions from the squad, Brad. Players who might have been in contention to play Origin this year. Some have been there before, some who haven't. And which surprised you the most?
I'd say Zach Lomax, the Dragons centre. I know Brad Fittler's a big fan of Zach's, and the New South Wales are a bit light on in centres. New South Wales are relying on Tom Trbojevic to come into Origin. He's played one game since I think round 6 earlier in the year, so he hasn't had a lot of football. He's still overcoming an injury that he incurred a week ago. Didn't play in the last round for Manly, and Jack Whiten is the other incumbent setter, and he's obviously got to get through a finals campaign with Canberra. So there's not. I thought Zach Lomax would be in the mix there. Tony Staggs from the Brisbane Broncos being another centre option. He's injured. He's out. He did his ACL, so. They're a bit light on there. I'd say Campbell Graham from South Sydney would be probably the next centre in line. But what I did notice about the squad was I was expecting a bigger squad. I thought this was going to be a train-on squad. I believe that those 5 players, they're in the team. They're in the 27, and I think that there's only going to be 27 names. If a player gets named in the name like these guys did, that means they're playing. That means they're in the bubble, that they will be in the squad for the series. Doesn't necessarily mean they'll play. David Nofaluma, the West Tigers winger, I think he'd be unlucky as well. I'm not sure how it works with eligibility, whether he was available to play for New South Wales, but he was certainly a name that was mentioned. He's had a fantastic season for the West Tigers, but there's probably not too many other players out of the 8 teams that didn't make the semis that could consider themselves unlucky. And I think what we're going to see this year with Origin is teams are going to be picked on form, because it's at the end of the season, and the teams whose seasons are over, they're going to have to wait 4 weeks before the grand final, whereas we're going to see a lot of players out of the grand final teams.
So they go into camp on October 19. That means that these players are required to maintain their fitness. They'll be given a program to follow, but they are allowed to leave the bubble, for that 3-week time until Origin camp begins on October 19. And every week we'll see Fittler naming more players from squads as they're eliminated. So, for example, if you think that the finals are going to go the way the bookies suggest them this week, we might see some Knights and also Cronulla Sharks players named this time next week. So we'll continue to watch that with a lot of interest. Our second story this morning comes from your colleague Troy Whitaker at NRL.com. And he's looking at the Sydney Roosters and their need to to make history, essentially, if they're to go on and win a third successive premiership this season. That's history beyond the fact that the three-peat hasn't been done in so long, and certainly not in the NRL competition. But not once in the game's 112 years has a team won the competition after conceding 50 points in a match. Of course, that 60-8 drubbing at the hands of South Sydney on Friday night was one that I don't even think Mystic Meg saw that one coming, and certainly not to the scale of the score that we saw. And very hard to imagine a team could play that poorly and then go on to win 3 big games or 4 matches over the next month and win a premiership. But this is the Sydney Roosters. This is a team that's been so good for the last couple of years. Sonny Bill Williams and James Tedesco are both quoted in the story. Tedesco says, "I'm not really thinking about statistics. The odds are against us and we'll take it and we'll change those stats, hopefully. I think as 2-time premiers, everyone's still going to come after us and want to knock us off." Sonny Bill Williams, I love this as well. Just like people said, you couldn't run a 4-minute mile. Someone has to do it, so hopefully we can be that team. Brad, I'm going to ask you straight outright, can the Sydney Roosters still win the NRL premiership?
Yeah, I believe they can. Probably if any other team had conceded 50 points, I'd be saying no. But the Sydney Roosters, I've just had this feeling about them all year that they were on track for the three-peat. They've built really well. They've probably never had their full team on the field together, so that's interesting. But they've just tracked along all season. Trent Robinson organises the season so meticulously. He wouldn't have been preparing for this, of course, but players were rested. He rested a lot of players last weekend. He was looking ahead to the finals. I believe they can beat Penrith this week. And if they do beat Penrith, then they're 1 win away from a grand final, from a third successive grand final. And they know how to win grand finals. They know how to get there. I think if any team can overcome this hoodoo, it would be the Roosters. And, records are made to be broken, aren't they? It's been 112 years, but someone will do it eventually. So this could be the year. And as you pointed out, they've already got history against them, or they've got to overcome or achieve history to win a three-peat. But they've looked all year. They've looked like the sort of team that, you think, they can do this for sure. When they get to the finals, they'll have another gear. And it's just the way that he's been mixed. Trent Robinson's been mixing the players up. Boyd Corden hasn't played a lot of football, and Sonny Bill's just come in. There was no Joey Manu and Brett Morris. There were a lot of players rested the other night. He's got a big squad to choose from. They're reasonably healthy as well. Haven't got too many players sitting on the sideline. So I think they'll go into this finals campaign fit, and despite the loss, I think they'll be full of confidence.
Yeah, I guess if you're going to have a loss like that, you'd absolutely much rather it comes in essentially a dead rubber. Not that you can perhaps quite ever say a Roosters Bunnies match is a dead rubber with the rivalry there, but they'd already sewn up that spot. In the top 4, they'd already, shown an ability to perform in the finals, year on year. So it's not going to mean a lot in the scheme of things, provided they can emotionally and mentally recover, which everything we've seen from this football club suggests they will be able to do that and leave it in the past. Then I just don't see how it has any significant bearing on the finals. Perhaps if they come up against the Rabbitohs, there might be a bit of, a few scars there, but I think you'd be a very brave man to write off the Sydney Roosters based on a bit of statistics. Our third story in rugby league today, and it comes from our mates across the ditch in the New Zealand Herald with Chris Ratui, who has a look at the Warriors and the way that they've finished the competition this year. The great journey is over for the Warriors, he says. They crushed the misfiring Manly Seagulls 40-28 to finish the NRL season in 10th, and it may well be the most glorious 10th in professional sport. Okay, he says, glorious might be taking the case a bit far, but anyone who's followed the Warriors' path, which included having to regroup following the sacking of coach Stephen Kearney after 6 rounds, the fact that the players have had 150 days in Australia, setting up camp first in Tamworth and then on the Central Coast, for many of them without their families, and the fact that they've had to do this under an interim coach, Todd Payton, who has agreed to take over the North Queensland Cowboys next season and rejected the chance to stay and be the permanent coach of the Warriors. It has been a pretty remarkable season from the Warriors. I guess from here, the question will be a football club that's had a lot of scrutiny over the journey around its mental toughness and its ability to perform consistently. Can they use this season as a springboard to play finals in 2021 and find some of that elusive consistency that they've missed for so long? If so, do you think they can play finals next year? And also, are there any other teams from outside the 8 who you think could join them, Brad?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think that saying, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think the Warriors have really, they'll prove that to be true next season. They've, it's been a remarkable journey for them. The sacrifices they've made, and it's been really well documented. That they've been without David Fusatua. They've been without Ken Mamalo, arguably two of the best wingers in the game. Leeson Armau got injured when they first came over to the training session, didn't play a game the whole time. He's a test front rower that they've been missing. They've had other injuries, other concerns, obviously all those family issues. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck has been away from his family for that entire period. Must have been extremely difficult. He's led the team really well, kept those guys together through the sacking of Stephen Kearney, who the players were extremely close to and were shocked, and they said they felt betrayed by, but they rallied around Todd Payton and they stuck together and they built out of this. And they've also, Blake Green, they lost him mid-season as well when he left to go to the Knights. And it's given them the opportunity to bring in some young players, like we've seen Chanel Harris-Tavita, the young halfback. He's formed a combination with Cody Nikorima. They've signed Adam Fanua-Blake for next season. That is a fantastic signing for the Warriors to give them a real hard edge in the front row. There might be some more signings to come, but they've also got Kane Evans and Ewan Aikens. Remember, they've got Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. They've got Fusatua, Mamalo, Peter Hiku, Nikorima. I said Harris-Tavita's got some experience there. They've got Tohu Harris has had a fantastic season, so they've got a lot to build with. And I think being in that camp for that 150 days that Chris mentioned will have bonded those players closer together. I know from talking to people in the camp that the younger players have just the experience of being around the older players for 24/7 and seeing how they live, I suppose, and how they prepare for matches and recovery and all of that has been a great learning experience for them. So I think the Warriors are in a really good position going forward. Nathan Brown's the new coach. Phil Gould's involved. I said the recruitment has been terrific with Fanua-Blake, Kane Evans, Ewan Aitken, with maybe Jack Hetherington to come. So I'm expecting them to capitalise on this next season. And the other team that I think will certainly be in finals contention, and I expect to play finals footy next year, is the Gold Coast Titans. They've done the same. They've finished the year with 5 wins in a row, 9th spot. They look like they're really building. They've recruited well off the field for next season. Justin Holbrook, their coach, has done a terrific job in this year. We're going to see some Gold Coast Titans players in this Queensland State of Origin side. Guys like AJ Brimson, he could be the fullback ahead of Callum Ponga. And with Ash Taylor's come good. Jamal Fogarty's a great story. There's a lot of really good stories out of the Gold Coast Titans. So they're the two teams I expect to be in the finals next year.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's not just that they're 9th and 10th and the next two on the ladder. It's the way in which they've played, the way in which they've developed, their players, as you spoke to, and also, their spirit and their culture and the way that they've finished the season. And I guess if, let's say those two teams do make it up there, two will have to drop out, and you start to wonder about teams like the West Tigers and the Dragons and the like. Do they have that same level of improvement in them, or is it going to be another long season for their fans? We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves there yet, though. We turn to rugby union now. Story from Tom Decent in the Sydney Morning Herald. He's speaking to Wallabies coach David Rennie. Of course, the Wallabies are now in Christchurch in New Zealand, preparing for two Bledisloe Cup fixtures. Just under 2 weeks away in Wellington for the first one there. They've got a few kind of COVID restrictions at the moment. They're hoping to be able to start full training tomorrow. A lot of speculation around the team lineup and who we can expect to see in Dave Rennie's first match day 23. One school of thought argues that it's risky to throw a bunch of kids with no test experience into the deep end against a largely settled All Black side oozing depth. However, Rennie has indicated in this article with Tom Decent that his first match day 23 absolutely has room for young faces. I've got a bit of an idea, but there's still some positions up for grabs, and we'll let the players do the talking over the next few days. Rennie said, we've always said said we're going to pick on form, and if you're good enough, you're old enough. There's no doubt some of these young men are going to put serious heat on the spot within that 23, and we've just got to make sure we've got a good blend, but also support around them. I want to ask, Brad, do you think that the Wallabies need to actually protect their youngsters from the enormous challenge of a Test debut against the All Blacks in New Zealand? Or is Rennie absolutely doing the right thing if he picks the very best players, regardless of their age and experience?
It's a new era. It's his first Test as Wallabies coach, and I think he needs to just pick the best team. They shouldn't fear failure. They shouldn't fear the young players won't be scarred by anything that's happened in the past. It's a reboot for the Wallabies, and this is a really unusual year as well. So it's a great time to, as I said, to have a fresh start in terms of playing the Bledisloe Cup. And yeah, I think what have they got to lose? If they're good enough, if Dave Rennie believes he's got to pick his team now, not the team that the team that played under Michael Checker or in the past. He's got to pick his Wallabies team, the players that he thinks are the best. And I think we shouldn't be afraid of the All Blacks. I mean, sure, they're a great team and they've been a great team over a long period of time, but this is a new era for Australian rugby, and I just think pick the best players, and Dave Rennie's got to start. He's got to be looking towards the next World Cup as well. So it starts now.
Yeah, extremely well said. And we've also got the unique situation this year. The players going off the back of Super Rugby AU, as opposed to playing a full season against Kiwi teams. So the confidence is sky high. You've got youngsters from the Brumbies and Reds who, of course, played off in that final. So they've been in good winning form. I'd love to see Noah Lolesio on the bench. I'd love to see Big Harry Wilson from the Reds getting a shot as well, also potentially off the bench. And someone like Tate McDermott, the young scrum half, I don't know what else he could do to prove that he deserves to be given an opportunity. So it'd be fascinating to see who Rennie picks. And we know that Rennie is, his reputation as a man who does such an amazing job with culture and bringing people together. So you'd absolutely back him in to put the right support networks around those players, so that they don't be overawed by the occasion and so that they can play to their potential. Final story today, we turn to the AFL competition. First week of finals in the AFL, of course. We've got Port Adelaide and Geelong facing off on Thursday night at the Adelaide Oval. Friday night sees Brisbane Lions and Richmond at the Gabba. Saturday afternoon, an elimination final between St Kilda and Western Bulldogs at the Gabba. And then Saturday night, the West Coast Eagles and Collingwood over in Perth at Optus Stadium. That's an elimination final as well. Our story today comes from Damien Barrett at afl.com.au. Barrett talking about the psychological edge, which has Richmond primed for another flag. Of course, Richmond Tigers won the premierships in both 2017 and 19. However, 2018 had just as big an influence on that group, according to veteran Shane Edwards. Edwards saying that year when the Tigers were beaten in the preliminary final by Collingwood, it actually helped the way that the group go about things, as unfortunate as it was at the time. Edwards said that seeing it go wrong and seeing it go right has given us a well-rounded experience, knowing that if you're just 10 minutes off in any given quarter, it can end your whole season, no matter how well you've done everything else. Richmond's opponent on Friday night at the Gabba will have a far different psychological preparation for the final this week, mainly due to the fact that it lost to Richmond in both round 23 last season and then also in the same final, second versus third last season. They also lost this season in round 10, kicking 4 goals, 17 against the Tigers. So psychologically, Brisbane haven't played well against Richmond over the journey. Do you think Richmond's experience has them primed to be clearly the front runner in the chase for the AFL Premiership, or teams like Port Adelaide and Brisbane, who don't have a lot of recent finals experience, are they just as well in the mix because of the way they've performed this year?
I think Richmond's record over Brisbane in those last 3 games is what will give them the edge. Certainly this weekend against the Lions. Finals experience, yeah, of course that counts for a lot, but the grand final is going to be in Brisbane this year. It's a totally different setup. It's unique. So in terms of preparation and preparing for finals, and I think especially when you talk about the grand final week is such a big occasion, and if you haven't experienced it before, it can overwhelm teams, and it can people just if you're not used to it, you just don't know what to expect in terms of trying to prepare your team. This is not necessarily the players, but the coaching staff and all the people off the field. So Richmond certainly have that advantage, but it's going to be different this year. So it's a bit of an unknown for everybody. So I don't know if that will make that big a difference. And I don't know if things that happened in 2018, yeah, they would have helped in 2019, and I'm not sure if they're going to help in 2020. But Richmond have also, they've come into this with winning form, into the final series with winning form. They have been there before. They certainly do know how to win big games, and they've got a pretty good track record against most of the other finals teams. I think that's what will give them the edge.
I think I can see Richmond finding their way through to the grand final. I wonder whether if they were in a grand final, not having the passion of the Tiger Army surrounding them and the grand final parade and the entire city of Melbourne that seems to turn yellow and black when the Tigers do make the final, whether that perhaps might impact them and whether they'll have to find a different way to get the lift that their supporters generally give them, and whether that might give, let's say, somebody like a Geelong or a Port Adelaide an opportunity, from an emotional perspective moving into the grand final. But, finals experience is so critical. It's probably the number one question mark about the Penrith Panthers in the NRL this season, whether they have the mentality to overcome a Storm, a Roosters, a Raiders who've been there, done that, worn the T-shirt. So it'll be fascinating to watch. We love this time of the year, even if it is a little bit later and a little bit warmer than usual. I'm really looking forward to having you back on the show again, Brad, in coming weeks to digest results and help preview those competitions as they head towards their conclusion. So thank you so much, as always, for joining me on the Best On Ground Weekday Kickoff. Great to catch up and look forward to chatting with you again very soon.
Yeah, likewise, Pete. Speak soon.
Thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you again tomorrow. Cheers.